Standing up in McKinney, this is According to Callis. It is episode 740, coming to you on Thursday, May the 8th, the year of our Lord 2025. In many ways, this is a bonus episode. In part because Monday's episode, that would be 739, was pretty rushed. Coming to you on the Monday, right? I've had some additional time to reflect, some time to chat, and I have some more to say. Imagine that. I'm not sure how long this is going to go, but I feel like it is a good idea, right? It's cause for reflection. So we're going to title the episode Unexamined Results. And before I get there, let me remind you, the show is not going away. It will be reimagined. And not that there's going to be any gender or race swaps, but just reconsidering what's the best way to do this going forward. But you can join me. You can still follow, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff at your podcatcher of choice, whether it's one of the Amazon feeds, whether it's Podbean, Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, whatever your flavor is. I am there. You can find me on the social medias. That's right. I got a page and a group over at Facebook. I'm a pro at Gab. I drop in at MeWe. And, I've got a underutilized X account. And, of course, for now, you can still find me on the YouTube. Still trying to figure it out if Rumble's worth the time. Maybe. All right, so I know there are a lot of people out there, particularly in Callan County, which is my home base, but that are besides themselves. How did this happen? How did all of our gains in the school district get undone? How did we lose some races that we should have won, and how did we not win yet in some of the other races? Well, I think that's what we need to look at. I think that's what we need to consider. And I took the time to go over the 7 points, if you will, courtesy of Miss McCarty, or Mrs. McCarty, excuse me. And by and large, I think 5 of the 7, if I remember correctly, she hit it out of the park. She was dead on. But there are some other things that need to be accounted for. So, without further ado, here we go. All right. So first and foremost, let us just say Callan County is still a very Republican county. If you doubt that, just consider the county-wide races and how did those play out. Ostensibly, the college board races were all nonpartisan as well. So don't lose faith. Don't lose sleep. That's where we're at. What really, in my mind, was the undoing was the lack of interest. What do I mean by that? Well, again, this is adjacent to a couple of the things brought up by Julie McCarty, i.e. Republicans only pay attention to national issues, and there's no interest in local issues. They're two of the same thing, but looking at it from different angles. So I suspect that all the dramas in D.C., and currently right now, whatever drama's left over is reserved for what's going on down in Austin. Now, for years, we have sent quote-unquote good conservative Republicans down to Austin. And I'm going to set aside any criticism I might have for any specific elected official that is down in Austin. I'm going to set that aside for the time being. That's not relevant. What is relevant is there's a growing disappointment with the results that we're getting out of Austin. And the very people that help propel our elected officials to Austin every 2 years are tired. And when they see that they can't make any changes in Austin, they wonder, well, why put in the effort and the time to do anything locally, right? These are nonpartisan races. We can go work the streets. Okay, maybe that's a bad choice of words, but we could put in all the time and effort and win, but still nothing happens. And I think that's a fair criticism. So you have a lack of interest, right? We do all the work to get the stuff done in Austin, and we don't get any good results. We watched what happened in a few of the school districts, in probably even a few of the cities where we did get good, quote unquote, good conservatives elected, and nothing happened. Or at least the things that did happen were not necessarily what the average public would consider a priority. Setting aside the book nonsense, and I call it nonsense only because there was never a true and honest discussion of what was going on with those books, and there never was going to be. And we'll revisit that in just a few minutes, I'm sure. The problem is our friends, our neighbors, they just want normalcy, right? They just want to have things on an even keel. They don't want to have culture war all day, every day. And when I'm gonna use the term the left, but you can interpret it to mean leftist, progressive, socialist. But I'm just going to go with short-term left. When the left is out of complete control, they can be partially in control. They can even be mostly in control. But if they don't have complete control, they go bananas and literally make stuff up and exaggerate and twist and manipulate and, quite frankly, scare the general public. Everybody's Hitler, everybody's Nazi, everybody's, marching to the gulag. It's just crazy. It's crazy talk. It's not attached to reality. And you cannot have an even-handed, legitimate adult conversation with somebody that resorts to that all the time. Now, I got to be honest, some of the folks on the right were not much better. Immediately, everything's branded socialist or communist, which in some cases may in fact be true. But if you're going to name call, if you're going to dismiss, you're not doing anybody any good. The second part of that is our elected officials, once they're elected, they forget that their job is actually to service and represent the people that got them there. They run on the mantra that, well, we are supposed to represent all. All of these people are my constituents. Yes, that is true in fact, but the reality is that's not the way it works. If you go talk to your average Democrat that's elected to the office, they'll tell you flat out, I'm here to support and represent the people that got me here. I'm going to push my agenda. I'm going to push my personal beliefs. I'm going to push all that stuff. Now, at the municipal level, they, and by they, I mean all the elected officials, right, left and center, they push the kumbaya narrative, the nonpartisan narrative, and it puts people to sleep. It just does. So when you go and liven it up, when you try and take, quote unquote, the MAGA, let's call it action in order to get elected, it's going to backfire. Because those same, let's call them less than stellar Republicans, they have no choice but to vote for all the Republicans in the general elections, but they have other options that, quite frankly, are marginally normal at the municipal level. And they're people that they know and they interact with and that they might even have a relationship with, and they're going to give up their principles over relationship. Or perhaps their primary principle is maintaining good relationship. And I find it really hard to fault somebody that approaches things that way. I mean, especially in the transactional nature of politics, if somebody actually does value a relationship over a principle, once you understand that, at least you know what you're dealing with. And I think that's where we fail. Okay, so I can't explain the outcome in Richardson. Now, some would say that's because of the replacement that's been going on there. Take what you want from that. But when the demographics change enough, that's the outcome. Setting aside all the baggage that's associated with the term replacement, and I'm aware of most of it. I'm not going to argue that. It's not really relevant to this conversation. I'll explain it this way, and I'll take some of the baggage away from it. If I take 100,000 Salvadorians and I drop them down into, I don't know, Monterrey, Mexico, let's just make it 1 million Salvadorians. Well, I don't know if I can move. Let's say 500,000 Salvadorians, and I drop them off into Monterrey, Mexico. Is it still really Mexican, or is it maybe Salvadorian? Likewise, if I take 10% of the Quebec population and transport them over to British Columbia, did I significantly change British Columbia? Yeah, I did. So when you take 1 million Yankees and dump them in a state down south, you're changing everything. You need to look no further than what's happened in North Carolina and Virginia. And if you doubt me, just pay attention to what's playing out in Texas. So it's really easy to blame the folks from Central and South America coming here. I mean, there are some issues, related to that, but by and large, they're not the voters. They're not the ones that are pushing the agenda. It's our own people. Some of them are displaced people from either California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, right? Maybe Washington or Oregon, perhaps Pennsylvania, Philadelphia particularly. I don't know. But when they come here, they have a different set of values, a different set of priorities, and they alter the landscape. I think they're far more damaging than people that come here that are, quite frankly, looking to make a better life. And they're generally not super political. Now, their children are, right? And their children become, shall we say, activated through the government school system, but that's another issue altogether. We'll remind me here. We're going to touch on the schools here in just a moment. So, politically speaking, at the municipal level, it would be ideal if conservatives, if right-wingers, if just your average Republicans would remember, when you run for office, you have to keep in mind you're going to see these people on a regular basis. You're going to interact with them, and they're all going to have different political points of view, and you have to be respectful. Now, right now, I can hear you. Well, Callis, that's not how the other side acts, and, doggone it. Why do we have to? No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, when you act like a normal person, other normal people pay attention, and they see that. You're never going to convince a leftist progressive socialist that you're a good person. You're never going to change their mind. But if you're respectful and fair and even-handed, but still hold firm to your principles, the normies, right? The average voter, the average American, if you will, they're going to know that. They're going to see it. The problem is they're afraid. And what happens is the quote-unquote conservative leaders, most of them suffer from a problem. Pusillanimous nature of them, right? They fail to stand up when they need to. They fail to lead from the front. They knuckle under. They're more often than not trying to make peace by selling us out than actually achieve any of the goals. You ever notice that when Republicans/conservatives are in charge, we really never get anything specific done. We never really move the ball. They stay true to the incremental minor changes, just enough to keep us happy, while not upsetting those other people that will never ever support them in the first place. Now keep in mind, that's a strategy, but it hasn't been successful. We're having to undo 100 years worth of damage. And a lot of people expect that you're going to be able to undo that in a single term. And that's simply not going to happen. But if we're always capitulating and we're always signing off to not upsetting people, we're never going to be successful. That's just the way it is. All right. So I know I teased this now twice, so let me revisit it real quick. The school districts are largely elected by school district employees and other municipal city employees. And in many towns, the school district, if they're not the largest employer in the city, they're probably in the top 10. Now, in the city of McKinney, I honestly don't know where it lines up, but I'm going to just suggest that when you have a city of 200 and let's say 20,000 people, and less than 20,000 people show up, and let's just ballpark it, 2,000 of them are government employees. You think that might swing an election or something? Do you think that might just cause a different outcome than what you might have intended? So while we want changes and while we see a value and a benefit to fixing quote-unquote government schools, while we would like to see government, i.e. city, streamlined business, those people, their primary concern is, how am I going to pay my bills in their retirement? So it's really hard to blame them for getting up in arms and being upset when somebody comes in and says, well, I'm going to cut the budget. I'm going to reel things in, because all they care about, and it's your primary concern too, but you don't have a government job. So, right? I mean, you don't want to do anything to irritate your boss or your company. You want to maintain your job. You want to maintain your retirement. That is your primary goal. So, but when you're dealing with people that work for government and you're going after government, of course they get defensive. They're going to do anything they can to keep you out. So I don't know how you fix that, because any time that you show up at a school board meeting and you say anything that questions or criticizes or, critiques policy, immediately you're smeared with being an extremist, a hater, somebody that wants to, I don't want to, let's just say you hate teachers. You hate the staff. You're anti-teacher. You're anti-librarians. You can't talk about any issue because you're never allowed to do that, because you're painted in the worst way. And when you throw on top of it that you've got, I want to think about how I want to say this. When you have folks that clearly have emotional or mental challenges, throwing out rhetorical bombs, calling people extremists and Christian nationalists, this, that, and the other thing, without being required to prove their point, and nobody reels them in, nobody tells them to, chill out, and they're able to act with impunity, it makes it really hard to have a discussion, an open-ended, friendly discussion, because that person's resorted to name-calling and dismissal and canceling. Unfortunately, it works. It works very well. And as a teacher, you're cowed. You don't want to upset your teachers association. You don't want to upset the administration. And God forbid you say something or do something wrong in the classroom, because either the parents are going to come hunting for you or the administration will. I'm not really sure how we're getting the best education that we could if the parents scare the teachers and the administration scare the teachers. It just doesn't seem like a good mix. I want teachers that are going to challenge students. I want teachers that run the gamut of political point of view, but largely keep it in check And really and truly, if you're a science teacher, nobody cares who you voted for. Now, if they come and ask you after class, just like if they want to have a religious discussion with you after class, okay, fine. It's a free country. Still, sort of, right? I support that. I promote and defend liberty pretty much in every way that I possibly can. So I'm not going to lose sleep over that. But that 55 minutes or an hour or 45 minutes or whatever it is that you have the students in your classroom, you really ought to stick to the subject. And a corollary to that is we spend a whole lot of time testing to exams because, well, there was yet another program designed by the state to monitor the outcomes. And because the money was tied to it, as it kind of should have been, but it forces school districts to have to meet certain criteria. And the only way they feel competent of reaching that goal is to take all that time out to actually teach to the test. So at the end of the day, nobody wins. Well, except for the administration, but that's a different story. All right, back to the primary. Like the little sound effect there? Back to the primary point here. Whether we like it or not, good Christian, whether we like it or not, good conservative, whether we like it or not, good Republican, municipal races are driven by a relationship. They're driven by who you know, who you network with, and quite frankly, your presentation. So it doesn't matter if you're 100% dead on every principle. If you do nothing but annoy voters, or you're off-putting by your presentation, or you're rude but not a rock star, people get turned off by that and they're not going to support you. Now, I did mention this before, so I'm going to revisit it briefly. If you consider the amount of money spent, invested, to re-elect an incumbent city council member, whom, by the way, is a good city council member by normal metrics, against somebody that, well, let's just say, is a Republican activist or conservative activist. I mean, that's just the easiest way to describe it. A 54 to 46 race, give or take a half a point or whatever it was, that's not a major loss. It's really not. Because in the city of McKinney, the Democrat Party gets a vote too in the municipal elections. The Democrats do show up in municipal elections. So 38 or 40% or whatever it is of a municipal election is by people left of center. It is by Democrats. So that if you're a Republican or you're a conservative, if you irritate 5, 10, or 15%, or whatever that number is, a race that you should win, you now lose. If you turn off or cause people to stay home, a race that you should have won, you now lose. I don't know how we overcome that, other than we run better candidates, we run better campaigns, that we're more careful about how we, market things, sell things. We have to be more careful. We have to recruit. We have to build a bench. We have to be prepared to win. You can't just throw something at somebody or throw somebody at something and expect to be successful if you don't have a plan. And in order to come up with a plan, you have to learn the concept of adapt or die, right? McKinney has always been a center-right city. It is still, in my opinion, a center-right city. But center-right is not hardcore conservative. Center-right is not hardcore Christian. It's just center-right. So if you're going to run for city council, if you're going to run for school board, and you run center-right, you run a nice, clean campaign, you stick to your principles, and you don't, annoy and agitate people that want to support you. It's frustrating because you're always going to have your detractors. You are going to have people that just go off on every little thing. And if you doubt me, just look at what's playing on with this whole airport fiasco. And just in the remaining couple of minutes here, the airport bond went down. They spent an absolute ton of money trying to sell us on the idea that we should fund the airport by your property taxes. But it went down. So then they turned around and they found another funding way, and they scaled down the amount of money they were going to spend on it. Now, I don't appreciate how they pulled it off, in the sense that it wasn't really open and transparent. Now, I know they're going to say they did this, and this. That the city of McKinney is run by a club, and I ain't in it. And quite frankly, most of you ain't in it either. Don't be upset by that. Just understand that's the way things work. But if they were to be more open, if they were to have an actual discussion and show the numbers and prove it out and be fair-minded about it, I think they'd be far more successful. So a $50 million loan, in my mind, is much, much better than $200 million loan. And perhaps, we don't get everything that we want the first go-around. Okay, fine. We're going to have an airport in McKinney. An airport in McKinney is an economic benefit to the city of McKinney and to Collin County long term. We all understand this, even though we might not be thrilled about it if we live in Fairview or East McKinney or the New Hope. I get it. Some people don't like that. I get it. So you're left with a couple of options. You can sell the property and move. You can adapt and understand that I'm going to have planes flying overhead. Or you can continue to fight a losing fight. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're free to make your own choices. But I will just tell you, if the airport is a good thing, which I believe it will be eventually, at some point we're going to see a boom out of it, then there should be private investors that want to be involved in it, that they should be investing right now. Not buying up the adjoining land. That's already been done by, the club that we ain't in. But there's got to be ways that we can encourage people to work together. And I just don't get it. I don't get it. Now, I've always been honest. I'm not a huge fan of the behavior of some elected officials. I'm not a huge fan of some of the issues and the positions they take. But I try my darndest to not make it personal. I try my darndest to not go after them, the elected officials, for anything other than a difference of a principle or a difference of an opinion or a policy. That's not always respected by the other side. So that's what people like about Donald Trump on a national level, is he'll go tit for tat with anybody. But in your city, in your town where you live with these people, and you, at least in theory, could see them at least once a week, you don't want to do that. That's not conducive to a good neighborhood. Again, I'm encouraging. Examine the results and see what we could do differently, how we can adapt. All is not lost. We need to keep that in mind. All is not lost. It's an opportunity. Will we take advantage of it? And with that, this has been According to Callus, and I will see you on the other side.
Canceled by the big tech mafia, but inadvertently profiting from owning their stocks in a mutual fund or ETF? At Two Pillars, they believe that censorship is a form of violence and a business practice that does not promote human flourishing. In many cases, through their investigative screening process, they can help you divest from companies that are denying your God-given, inalienable right to speak freely. Hey, Patriots, Two Pillars believes it's time for conservatives to align their values and investments. Two Pillars is your place for impact investing in the parallel economy. Find out what's in your investment portfolio with a complimentary portfolio review. Contact them today to learn more. Call toll-free at 833-377-0051 or send an email to info@twopillarsam.com. That's info@twopillarsam.com. Get started today. Advisory services are offered through Jacob & Boaz Asset Management, LLC, doing business as Two Pillars Asset Management or Two Pillars, a registered investment advisor in the states of Texas and California. Two Pillars is not endorsed by any government agency and is not engaged in the practice of law or tax advice.